Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Welcome to the 37th webinar as part of our GFIdeas webinar series. GFIdeas India is a community for innovators who are transforming our food system by creating or expanding access to smart protein solutions. This community's goal is to advance the smart protein ecosystem for India. There are currently 1,300 plus members in the community from different verticals of the smart protein sector, with a mix of business, professionals, investors, students, researchers, service providers, and entrepreneurs. The community serves the first stage of onboarding for any stakeholder that GFI India interacts with. We have a LinkedIn community, which is a platform that allows community members to directly network with each other, highlight any recent developments, share requests and opportunities, and stay updated about any new resource, events, or interesting news. If you are interested in joining the community, you can fill out an intake form, which my colleague Janvi will share on the chat. Once you have completed the form, you can put in a request to join the LinkedIn group, which link also we will share. Please note that filling the form is a prerequisite to access the community on LinkedIn. With that, today we are supported by Parnika Pavanram, who is the Assistant Commissioner as part of the Karnataka Administrative Service, posted as a General Manager at Karnataka Innovation and Technology Society under the Ministry of Electronics, IT/BT, and Science and Technology, who is handling the biotech and ESDM policy for the government of Karnataka. Thank you so much for joining and being here today, Parnika.
Thank you so much.
Today's webinar is sectioned into three parts. First, we will have Parnika, who will take us through the Karnataka Biotechnology Policy 2024 to 2029, which was just launched last year. We're thrilled that the policy recognizes smart protein as a sector of bioindustry. Parnika's webinar will give us a good understanding of the benefits offered under the policy to entrepreneurs, companies, and incubators within the region of Karnataka, and any other helpful details on eligibility, how to access those schemes and incentives offered under the policy. Post the presentation by Parnika, we have an exciting fireside chat that I recommend you not to miss. After the fireside chat, we have time for a Q&A round for any questions, doubts, or suggestions that you might have for Parnika. Just a reminder that this webinar is being recorded, and we request you to use the Q&A box for any questions that you might have. With that, I will hand it over to Parnika to take us through the biotech policy in the form of a presentation. Parnika, feel free to share your screen.
Yeah, thank you so much, GFI. It has been quite a long association with GFI and the department in trying to reach out to the startups from this sector. And the department is also having a lot of dedicated focus for this segment because we see that it's a growing area, it's a very promising area. So we look forward to actually, kind of understand the specific requirements of this sector and to also see how we can customize our benefits and policies to the requirements of this sector. With that, I'm sure some of the participants may already know of some of the schemes that I'm going to talk about, but to give a holistic picture, we'll just go through the entire, spectrum of opportunities available, post which I'll be happy to answer a few questions. So just allow me a minute to share my screen. Yeah, hope this is visible.
Yes, Parnika.
Perfect. So a lot of you would be aware of the fact that Karnataka is one of the leading players when it comes to the national biotech ecosystem. In fact, Karnataka currently accounts for 1/5 of India's bioeconomy, and it is projected to reach a significant portion shortly. As an outcome of this policy, by 2030, we hope to reach a 1/3 share. And that differentiation, as shown in the graph, that shift from the current trajectory shown through the black line towards the red line is something that we're hoping to achieve through various policy interventions, through the Karnataka Biotechnology Policy. What is it that has so far made Karnataka a unique state when it comes to biotechnology is the fact that 30% share of biotech investments in the country are here in Karnataka. And it is the first in attracting investment intentions since 2016. And 60% of India's biotech companies are here. And a third of the share of India's biotech exports also comes from this state. To me personally, the most important, point is that of the fact that fourth largest skilled workforce in the country is from here, and 54% of India's biotech workforce is from the state of Karnataka. While yes, it is definitely a matter of pride for us. More importantly, I see it as a matter of responsibility because it means that what amount or what investment the state makes today in skill development and in promoting upskilling is going to define the quality of the country's biotech workforce in the coming years. So we see that as an important aspect to be focused on. And so in fact, several of our activities and initiatives you will see in the coming slides are focusing on this purely. Couple of firsts to the credit of Karnataka, first state to have a dedicated biotech policy way back in 2000 when the other states were still, there was no policy even at the country level for this particular sector. And we also have a dedicated vision group and the first state to have such a facility to actually look at, to bring together the industry, startups, academia, and various other stakeholders and the pioneers in their fields to act as a goal setting group, which kind of sets the tone for what the department should be focusing on. So year on year, there have been several great inputs which have been derived from the vision group, which kind of forms the basis of our policy making process itself. And of course, in 2023, the state hit 1,000 startup mark, and I think 2 years from there, we have soared far higher than that. And thanks to entities like the ones that are participating in the webinar today, we have had a significant amount of activity and traction and interest when it comes to innovation in biotech in the state of Karnataka. So a couple of important pillars that have contributed to the success, one of which is the fifth pillar, is the policy pillar, which we'll elaborate on while briefly touching upon the first four. Karnataka is a home to several national and state research centers. And this is not even an exhaustive list, to be honest. So you see some of the most prominent multidisciplinary research entities such as IASC or Institute of Advanced Studies or NCBS for that matter. All of these have been significant contributors in laying the foundation for the right kind of academic talent to be nurtured here. And this academic talent in turn has pioneered several research initiatives as well as pioneered the translation of this research into successful products and startups. And that is something which is a very important pillar to our state success. And of course, large presence of biopharma, bioagri, bioindustrial, bio-IT, and bioservices industry. This is just a few of the big names. Of course, there are thousands more that have consistently and quietly contributed to the success of the state. And in fact, there are several companies listed here whose skilling and upskilling programs are so well known across the world that several of them actually host teams from various countries to get upskilled here while also seeking opportunities elsewhere. So the first pillar of having a strong R&D hub is where the industry as well as the research institutions have played a major role. And coming to the second pillar, which is that of innovation hubs, this is where the state government's intervention has been quite crucial in the sense that you can see that across the length and breadth of the state of Karnataka, we have several centers of innovation which have been set up, sector specific and some sector agnostic in the sense we have a dedicated horticulture, biotechnology, incubation and innovation center with University of Horticulture Sciences, Bagalkot. There is also an agri-biotech park with the University of Agriculture Sciences, Dharwad. In the coastal district of Mangalore, we have one very well-known bio incubator called as the Manipal Government of Karnataka Technology Business Incubator. They also recently, in the last Global Bio India, won the Best Bio Incubator Award. And very aptly placed, we have a Center of Excellence in Aquamarine Innovation with NITE University in Mangalore. This is a very unique center, one of its kind, focusing on several cutting edge research and innovation projects, as well as supporting startups that are working in this space. They cover a broad spectrum of applications, including marine surveillance, marine biodiversity conservation, biodiversity protection, and several other core marine resource hybridization projects as well. So there is a significant amount of work and innovation happening out of this COE. And with CFTRI in Mysore, we have a nutraceutical and phytopharma incubation center. And of course, Bangalore being the hub of a lot of these activities, we have several institutions which are supporting this cause. To the south of Bangalore, close to Electronic City, is where we have the Institute of Bioinformatics and Applied Biotechnology, Center for Human Genetics, wherein we have also set up an Institute of Advanced Genome Editing and Gene Therapy, and the Bangalore Bio Innovation Center, which in itself is a very important incubation support for the entire system. And also coming up is the Center of Excellence in Health Tech and MedTech, which is a very crucial segment which was thus far included in the larger biotech incubators, but now with a dedicated focus on having good quality support being given to especially medtech startups that are looking at innovating in this space. Of course, all these facilities have an active support extended towards several allied sectors as well. So even, in fact, one of the more recent development is the Technology Business Incubator Scheme under the Startup Policy of Karnataka has announced 11 new TBIs, all of which are beyond Bangalore, so that any startup which is looking towards incubation support, mentorship support, facilitation support, especially in domains such as agri-tech, food tech, medtech. There's also there are also several of the 11 TBIs. There are several being set up in the space of robotics, AI. All of these different sector-specific TBIs are being set up. 11 different ones all across the state yet again, ranging right from Belgavi to Dharwad to Tumkur to Mangalore to Mysore. So it's a very good spread, so that startups which are spread across Karnataka don't really have to relocate to Bangalore to gain access to facilities. So that's something which has also been approved and announced recently. And of course, C-Camp is a very well-known facility within Bangalore, which is part of the NCBS GKVK cluster. And we have an active center of excellence in agri-tech with C-Camp. And we also run what is called as the Karnataka Startup Advancement Program, and we'll talk a little more about it in the coming slides. So as mentioned, Center of Excellence is a very unique concept to the department, and why I say it's unique is because when the department sets up a Center of Excellence, it is modeled in such a way that the startup, the academic institution that can support from the technical side, and the industry, which can support from a market access and scale up side, as well as any other concerned government departments. All of them are brought together under one roof so as to support the whole spectrum of activities and become the go-to innovation hub for each sector. For instance, the Agri Innovation Center of Excellence has Agri Department also involved, so that the FPOs and the whole agriculture department's machinery on the ground level is easily accessible and understandable to startups. So similarly, the Center of Excellence in Health Tech and MedTech now has an active presence of the Department of Health. So we have, of course, if talking specific to the audience here, your best fit would, as of now, be in the agri innovation because they have a food tech focus. But if there are any specific facility requirements, we are happy to support that even in Bangalore Bio Innovation Center or in any of the incubation centers that we mentioned, including the Manipal TBI as well as several new TBIs which are now in the process of being set up. So that being the second pillar of innovation hubs, which are funded and promoted by the department. There are several infrastructure facilities that are readily available for startups. In fact, we have recently handheld and supported several startups that were in the process of expansion. So we understand that getting space either built up or plain land is a bit of a challenge for startups to actually negotiate that entire space. So we have an in-house liaison officer of sorts who can take the requirement from a startup and actually coordinate with the industries department. They work with private developers. They make sure that a list of options are made available to a startup in the price range that they're looking for, and also ease the facilitation, ease the process of the paperwork to get the necessary approvals. In fact, we also understand that several approvals with, let's say, pollution control board or fire or all these NOCs that are required, building plan approvals, all of these are a bit time consuming for a startup. So wherever there is a hiccup, we ensure that the department steps in and we facilitate speedy approvals to ensure that there is no delay for a startup, especially because we understand for a life science startup, timelines are extremely critical. And especially in the case of food tech startups, generally the environmental clearance is a lot more specific. So we ensure that we facilitate for that. Apart from this, of course, the department, we ourselves have developed a life science park in Electronic City, which is a fully built up, fully ready space, ready to occupy, which is readily available for any startups that are looking for space. We're also actively connecting startups that are looking for land for manufacturing kind of a use across near, of course, in Bangalore would be difficult and also very pricey. So the outskirts of Bangalore, which is not too far from the airport and not too far from the city itself, is also being facilitated. Coming to the skill development aspect, as I mentioned, the state is extremely invested in the whole concept of developing a strong workforce, which is not just academically sound, but also industry ready in terms of employability. So we are working on skilling on two fronts. One, of course, is the whole entrepreneurship development at a institution or academic institution level, and also technical skill development with several industry partners. So, in fact, there is a new program that is launched for the benefit of the larger ecosystem called as Nipuna Karnataka, which is a large-scale skilling initiative which has been announced and already implemented, where 40% of the training cost for a company is borne by the department. So how it works is either a company or a academic partner can submit a proposal to the department saying we want to skill X number of people in a particular sector, and this is the kind of the process that we'll follow. These are the things that we will need. This is the cost per person for the training process. So that 40% of that cost is actually borne by the department. The remaining 60% is open for either the industry or the academic partner or both, or even the trainees themselves through their fee to bear the cost, so that there is a significant amount of burden which is removed from the company when it comes to a skilling requirement. So this Nipuna Karnataka scheme, of course, is sector agnostic. So we've already implemented it successfully in IT and a couple of other domains. We are actively working with about 8 to 9 companies within the biotech sector for this skilling and upskilling initiatives. So that's on skill development. And possibly the most relevant and most interesting pillar of activity that the state is invested in is the policy as well as the conducive programs. So we'll briefly touch upon the programs that are of great interest and subsequently also delve into the policy itself. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the Elevate funding, which is a one-time grant mode of funding which is given out to early stage startups. In fact, this is the single largest grant funding program in the country, where close to, I believe, 900 startups or so have been supported so far, and up to 50 lakhs is provided in grant funding in two tranches. And this is an activity which is ongoing on an annual basis. That's, of course, the early stage support. Even before a startup hits an early stage, right when they are still at a student level and at an institution level, we see that there are several student projects which have the potential to become startups but may not always make the cut because of lack of guidance. That is where the New Age Innovation Network program, or the NAIN program, plays an important role. This is where we work closely with higher education institutions, fund the institution to in turn fund a startup, and help in translating their research ideas into commercially viable startups. And the next challenge we identified in this process is that several students actually face hurdles in taking entrepreneurship as a choice, because they may have financial dependencies and other constraints. So that is where the Rajiv Gandhi entrepreneurship program has been put in place, where a monthly stipend is paid to student entrepreneurs who have a promising startup idea. And this actually, the call is currently open for the Rajiv Gandhi entrepreneurship program, and if I'm not wrong, today is the last day. So that's again a very interesting program that is really beneficial too, for actually encouraging translation of research, because we see a lot of promising research projects but which do not make it to a viable startup. So NAIN and Rajiv Gandhi entrepreneurship focus on the student entrepreneurship area. Early startup support is where Elevate comes into picture, and a focused program for women-led entrepreneurs, or rather Elevate for Women, is what is called as the V-Escalate program. And once a startup is slightly more mature, the venture fund to startups, or the Kitwin fund, where the state with a couple of other state financing entities has put together a fund for investing in startups. So this is again another important activity for the department. Now, once the startup has reached a certain scale, a certain maturity level, we see that there is a huge dip in the success rate of a startup, especially in the life sciences segment, because of the long gestation period. In order to address this issue, this department, along with CCAM, came out with this Karnataka Startup Advancement Program, which has given, of course, now it's in the phase two. And in phase one, they successfully supported 50 startups, and they have proven data to show that their interventions through mentorship, through financial access support, through market access support, has actually helped bring down the timelines of, or the gestation period of a startup by a significant amount. So they measure it by TRL levels, and several important startups today have actually emerged out of this program also. So CCAM has supported startups, the likes of which all of you may be familiar with. String Bio is one such. There's also a startup called Krishi Tantra, which is actually based out of Mangalore, and which is today has partnered with the government of India for their implementation of the soil health card scheme. So it has been identified and chosen by the government of India for the implementation of that scheme. So they've done really well for themselves. There's another several more, Black Frog being another medtech startup which has really scaled up affordable medical device technology solutions, especially in tier 2, tier 3 markets. So that's another very promising startup which has emerged out of CCAM through the Startup Advancement Program. So once a startup has successfully scaled up, the next step is for them to actually, become a full-fledged market player, that is where we realize that for a lot of the solutions that the startups are offering, government ourselves, we can play a major role by acting as the customer, because a lot of the time we need the solution they're offering, and we can also give the scale to a startup when it comes to purchases. So the preferential market access program is one program where the government acts as a buyer for the startups solutions, and because there is a tender process and all that involved, which cannot be worked out by a startup, we actually amended the Procurement Act, allowing for startups to be empaneled with the government and mapped to specific departments so that they can actually procure, of course, up to a certain capping, but procure from startups directly without having to go through the tender process. So we have already successfully empaneled 10 such startups, and more empanelment processes are underway. So this has again been a very important program for providing that much needed headway for a startup to enter this entire space. The last program that I will talk about is the Global Market Access Program, in which we support startups that are looking at expanding into global markets through providing 80% reimbursement of travel cost, stay, that's accommodation, and also event participation costs. And we also look at how it's a fully curated program where we identify a country, identify a sector, and then handpick startups through an open selection process where about 7 to 10 startups generally are taken as a cohort. We identify the right stakeholders for them to meet, and we arrange those meetings for them and ensure that there is the objective of that entire program is to ensure these startups actually know exactly what to expect in the market, how to register their business, who to talk to, what are the compliances, who are the regulatory people to be aware of. All of this information is provided to them firsthand. And in fact, in some of our programs, we've had startups come back with a registered office in the particular country during the program itself. So it's usually a week-long cohort program, and that's we've seen that happen in the case of Belgium as well as Australia. And the Belgium cohort was actually a life science specific cohort. So apart from this, coming to the actual policy itself, there are 6 major pillars to the Karnataka Biotech Policy. Starting from skill development, we've already spoken about this in quite detail. And streamlining regulatory frameworks, as I mentioned, of course, the state level regulatory frameworks, we handhold the startups approval processes. If there are any state drugs control approvals that are required, any kind of state level approvals that are required to be facilitated, we ensure that one email to the department saying this is my acknowledgement number, this is where it is, this is when I filed it, this is what I need. And we follow it up internally to ensure that the necessary information is conveyed and approvals are also expedited. Also, for regulatory approvals at a central government level, we liaison between state and center to ensure that there is sufficient support given for even the regulatory clearances which are needed from a central government point of view. Specific support to biomanufacturing. This is where the department had actually worked closely with the government of India in establishing a biomanufacturing unit. Of course, the facility is now coming up in CCAMP. CCAMP has been chosen by BIRAC for actually implementing the biomanufacturing facility. While that is on one side, the department is also actively working with several industries to set up collaborative biofoundries so as to promote biomanufacturing capabilities that are available to startups in this domain. So especially for this audience, I believe that biomanufacturing and the required facilities are of crucial importance. So we see that in fact, this is an outcome of some of the other discussions that we have had with GFI as well, where we applied for it from a food tech point of view, smart protein point of view. And even now, the discussions are currently ongoing with several industry partners, large industry partners, who are willing to invest some amount and also act as a technology support partner for establishing biomanufacturing facilities here in the state, which can be used as a facility available for startups. And the next pillar is on supporting biotech startup and MSME ecosystem. We have covered that in the programs in the previous slide. Preferential procurement also covered, where the government acts as a buyer. And the last pillar is that of the fiscal incentives and concessions, wherein we look at how several incentives can be made available to startups that are in this domain. This includes, for both startups and MSMEs, there are several reimbursements that are available, starting right from a GST reimbursement to a patent cost reimbursement, wherein if a patent is filed by a startup, immediately at the time of filing itself, you can apply for a reimbursement where 70% of the cost is reimbursed, 70% of your patent filing cost is reimbursed. Upon grant of the patent, the remaining 30% is also reimbursed. So this is one of our most sought after incentives. There's also a quality certification cost, where any cost that you are incurring in the process of quality certifications can also be reimbursed by the department. Similarly, there is a marketing cost reimbursement, wherein if a startup is traveling abroad for participating in any event, the travel, accommodation, event participation, for the registration, event stall design cost, all of this is reimbursed up to 30%. And this is, of course, post the expenditure. So once the trip is complete, within a specific period of time, you have to submit the necessary bills and invoices with the complete statement of expenses. There is on the website of the department, there is a dedicated link given to the place where all these applications are available. So the application can be made through that particular portal. Apart from this, there are also, for the larger entities, there are incentives such as STP, ETP cost reimbursement, which are also involved. And for any entities that are looking to set up an incubator or upgrade an incubator or an accelerator, there is a one-time capital grant support that is also given. In case of MSMEs and industries, there is also a production linked incentive that is made available, and which basically means it is given on the turnover of the company. And we also look at several incentives on the capital cost side for larger entities. So these are some of the incentives that are available. Of course, details of the same are available in on the website, the details of which I'll be sharing shortly. Some of the focus areas of the policy include bioagri, bioindustrial, under which the smart protein and nutraceutical is an important focus area. Marine biotech, synthetic biology, medical device, AI and ML in biotech, AMR, multiomics for health, and cell and gene therapy for rare diseases, and space biotech are all important focus areas which the policy lays great emphasis on. And as I mentioned, the incentives that are available are in the category of startup, MSME, and large industries. As you can see in the startup segment, there's a state GST reimbursement, there is a marketing cost reimbursement, patent cost reimbursement, quality certification cost reimbursement, and also a one-time capital grant support for any entities that are looking to set up an incubator or an accelerator. Within the MSME segment, while there are a few repetitive incentives like the patent cost, marketing cost, and quality certification cost, the added incentive here are the prototyping cost reimbursement, where if there is a cost involved in the development of a prototype, a technical committee evaluates the costs involved. So that could be your raw material, that could be your labor cost, that could also be any procurement of softwares, tools, or any of these kind of activities for developing that prototype. All of that is reimbursed to a certain extent. There is also an interest subsidy on loan amount and a stamp duty exemption in the case of registered documents. a land conversion fee incentive, where if you are looking at procuring land and a land conversion fee was involved, that is also incentivized. And a power tariff concession, where if you are charged under the industrial power tariff, you will be, if you're charged under the commercial power tariff, you will be given an industrial power tariff certificate so that your power tariff as a whole comes down. I'll not delve into the details of the large industry segment, but several of these incentives, along with more capital intensive incentives, are also available here. Of course, there's a significant amount of alignment between the Bio E3 policy of the Government of India and the Karnataka Biotech Policy, starting right from the focus areas and also more importantly on the biomanufacturing and bio AI fronts. So we are actively working with the Government of India to set up the Bio Artificial Intelligence Hub in Karnataka. And with the presence of several COEs and institutes which are in this space, there's a lot of active work happening in that space as well. So Karnataka's entire, to summarize what we as a department and as a state are trying to do, our focus is on AI for life sciences and tech bio, and there's a significant amount of impetus given to the biofuel category, medtech and health tech, as well as biomanufacturing facilities and skilling specific to the industry ask. So if I have to highlight 5 major points that the department is focusing on from an industry point of view, this would be it. And within the biomanufacturing, of course, we have had several rounds of conversations with GFI to understand what would be their specific requirements, and we have tried to facilitate the same as well. Right. And in conclusion, I have also shared the contact details of the department. We are super active on social media, as a department, on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, as well as the department website is also listed here. For any details, the website has also recently been revamped to make it more user-friendly and more structured in its presentation of information. So please do take a look at it, and please do follow the social media handles for updates, because that's the easiest way to do it at this point. And we look forward to hearing back from you on any specific feedback or any queries that you would want to share. So that's about it from my side. Thank you. Thank you so much to GFI for the opportunity to convey this from the department side.
Thank you so much, Parnika. I think this has been super valuable for everyone. It's been a wealth of information. So thank you for taking us through the entire policy and what can be availed and accessed by entrepreneurs. The next section of this webinar will be a fireside chat, which is essentially a dialogue that will focus on bringing the perspective of an entrepreneur navigating the challenges of unlocking government support for this emerging sector. The conversation will explore practical insights, address any pressing questions, and identify ways to enhance collaboration and coordination between entrepreneurs and the government. For the fireside chat, I would like to welcome Dr. Yashaswini Balaraju. Dr. Yashaswini is a scientist and entrepreneur who was the co-founder of a smart protein startup called Mycovation, which was Asia's first mycelium-based food company. Currently, she's a consultant supporting several startups with early technological challenges. Thank you for being here. We have some questions in the Q&A box, which we will get to after the fireside chat. So I request everyone to continue populating with your questions or your thoughts. But with that, I will hand it over to Dr. Yashaswini and Parnika for the fireside chat.
Thanks, Parnika. That was a very insightful session. So basically, it gave us a lot of advantages of being a Karnataka-based startup. And I would like to thank Radhika for the brief introduction and also add on to a little bit more about what I bring on the table or what's my experience has been in the field of smart protein. So by the way, I'm very glad to be part of this fireside chat today. As an entrepreneur who's interested to understand the benefits or incentives available in Karnataka, that was my main reason of being here today. And though I have navigated the world of biotechnology and entrepreneurship over a decade now, and in the past few years, my focus has really been in or around mycelium technology and smart proteins, building solutions and not just innovative but also sustainable, because these days sustainability and environmental policies are also going alongside. And I believe smart proteins do have a lot of alignment with these policies as well. And my journey started from a lab. So I come from an academic background, deep in molecular biology and cancer biology, but eventually found myself on the path of building a startup and working with fermentation technology and scaling the products. So I faced several hurdles and challenges during my journey as a startup founder, and through my work with microvation, and now as part of a several research and innovative projects that I'm working on in across border associations, I've had a chance to explore the ecosystem, not just in India, but also across Southeast Asia and East Asia. And what excites me right now is how different regions are approaching smart protein innovations. So I'll get more specific towards the smart protein innovations because most of these countries, the smart proteins are addressed as a key factor under AgTech space. And having had an opportunity to engage with the ecosystems in Singapore, South Korea, and Thailand, which each of them have brought a unique perspective. So I'd like to ask Parnika about, based on your experience driving innovation policies, how do you see Karnataka's biotechnology strategy aligning with what's happening globally today in food and biotech space, Parnika?
Right. So I think the most common factor in this aspect is the fact that there is a significant shift in perception of food and perception of agriculture, and how a policy approaches these aspects, because largely all this while it was more of scale, but now it is more of sustainability. And I think that's a very significant shift that we see from not just a global but also a national perspective, and of course a state perspective too. And with that intent, we see that several policies are also driving this cause home, in the sense, if you see the kind of incentives that are being given, or the kind of rather disincentives that are being given to unsustainable and not so environmental friendly practices, that itself goes a long way in justifying the fact that there is a significant push being done towards this. And for a government department to be talking about biotech itself was quite unheard of until recently, because if you see, Karnataka was the first state to have a policy in 2000, which means the other states weren't even thinking about a policy for biotech, let alone within biotech, agri-tech or food tech, and within food tech, now we have narrowed it down to smart proteins and what kind of specific technology requirements are there. In fact, the mention of the emphasis that the Bio-E3 policy has had in this for this domain, and we today we don't see any life science conference which does not have a panel on this topic. So the kind of prominence that is being given towards this sector is itself a proof of the fact that a lot of people are interested to hear and also act on this domain. So the more the number of people who speak about this, the more the government also has a basis for incentivizing this particular sector. So that's essentially what I see as a common factor at both the state as well as from a global point of view.
Makes absolutely sense. So you did also mention about the TBIs that is being set up specific for AgTech or smart protein innovation. Do you have an idea when would be these realized, and what is the time that it might take us through?
You're referring to the biomanufacturing facility?
Yes, the TBIs that you mentioned.
Okay, TBIs are they have all been approved. So they'll be operational over the next 4 to 6 months, because these are all brownfield projects. None of them are greenfield. And these are all in existing academic institutions. So there is already a system and a framework in place. So there is not too much, there's nothing much to be done afresh. So in that sense, we have quite all the 11 TBIs that we spoke of. These are we're looking at operationalizing them latest, probably now we're in May, June, July, maybe latest by August. We are looking at having them being operational.
Great. So actually, with my experience of being incubated at CFTRI and also having participated in several global accelerator programs in Singapore, we had been part of Korean Startup Challenge in Korea, as well as Space F program in Thailand. These are all specific programs that is focused in food tech or global access program sort of initiatives. We also have seen programs like Mass Challenge and Big Food Redesign Program. These programs are focused on the upcoming global solutions for food and sustainability kind of applications. So that brings me to a question. Could we envision a version of these programs in Karnataka? Maybe a targeted grand challenges or cross-border partnerships in the smart protein space, which the government could initiate?
Absolutely. So I think there is already a Grand Challenge Karnataka program that is run by the department. Of course, we do not have one that is specific to food tech. We have it in the agri-tech space. We have done the program about 3-4 times now. In fact, CCAM runs a grand challenge of sorts, in the sense that they select startups to the COE based on problem statements that are announced, and any startups that are addressing these problem statements are onboarded to the Center of Excellence with support and mentorship and incubation space and access to labs and all of that. So that is in a certain shape or form already happening. But the department is now looking at having very focused hackathons of sorts, where we're trying to work closely with the industry to support this kind of an initiative. And hopefully we will be able to do one specific to the food tech or sustainability tech space. And coming to the other point, which was about global collaborations in this space. As I said, the Global Market Access Program is a very important opportunity. In fact, the Belgium one focused on the life sciences domain, and there was one in clean tech and sustainable tech that was done with Australia. Specific to food tech, to be very honest, we haven't got enough demand. When I say demand, I mean two things. One, we should also have a country that is interested in exploring this space and inviting startups from this space. So we have partnered with close to 30 plus countries under a Global Innovation Alliance vertical within the department. And we engage closely with global delegations on a regular basis. So far, food tech as a thing has not come up in a focused manner in any of our conversations with countries. But if there is enough demand from the startups here in Karnataka, we can still explore depending on which country these startups would want to explore. So smart protein sector specific market access program is possible, provided the startups are able to give us that kind of demand and also tell us that this is the country and this is our requirement in this country. So we will be able to curate the program around it, and we have the necessary infrastructure to do that.
Great. And Parnika, this brings me to another question. Do you see, because I have known some of the accelerated programs in India that have been connecting to these global countries and cross-border innovation, specifically in Delhi and in Mumbai. So do you see one of that happening in Bangalore? Because Bangalore is a biotech hub or the first in startup kind of space. Do you see one such thing happening other than us bringing or startups bringing in the requirement? I think Bangalore or Karnataka needs one such stage for global sharing.
So, while there is no centralized platform for global collaboration, but all of our centers of excellence, all the 20 plus centers of excellence that we mentioned, all of them have been mapped to several of our international collaborators. So there is, I think, Catalyst from UK. There is California Life Sciences from the US. There's a collaboration ongoing with Georgia Tech. There's also a collaboration with Stanford that's coming up. There's one with Denmark. There's one with Netherlands. So we have made all of these connections and also facilitated those connects with the centers of excellence so that any startup which is looking for a global collaboration or partnership, the COE can facilitate that connect. So we have decentralized that global partnership mechanism so that the COEs can actually own that relationship and take a call. Because for us to facilitate sector specific connects will not be very fruitful because the COEs are sector specific. The connects they build will be a lot more useful for startups.
Great. So I agree with that. And given that most of the startups and companies at the initial stage would be looking for a specific space to start from, I see Karnataka has set up a lot of incubators or incubation centers, and most of them are actually well equipped. But each of these spaces have limitation. Say most with us in CFTI, we had a timeline of 18 months with an extension of 6 months. And the big question after that is what next? Because until this stage, most of us will be looking at building the technology. And after 2 years or 24 months, the stage is where we scale from lab scale to pilot scale. And that is when I think we need a lot of support in terms of infrastructure, manufacturing, and when there is an exit from the incubation centers, the big question is what next? Where do we go next? So, do you think there is I mean, how do we think we can address this post incubation gap more systematically through Karnataka's policy frameworks?
Yeah, so this scale up is a very important challenge which has been brought to the notice of the department. So when it comes to, of course, there are multiple challenges that a startup face during scale up. The most prominent of which is the availability of affordable infrastructure. So that is where the biomanufacturing facilities that we are exploring, or even the bare shell facilities that are already available in the likes of Electronic City, are all being used. In fact, today in most of our COE models, we are including two kinds of things. One is the pure play incubator space, and also a scale up space, which is a bare shell space, which is not technically a shared space. So we are trying to incorporate both these models when we are trying to set up infrastructure facilities so that the startups, before they are capable of having a space of their own, can actually take up this space, which is of course pricier than the incubation, but where they have the leeway to customize things based on their requirements. So that is definitely an option that's available. Apart from this, we've also noticed that the requirements of startup at the time of scale up are very startup specific, in the sense some need it in a particular area, some need it in a particular at a particular rate, some need it with a particular kind of clearance. So it's a little difficult logistically to have a common facility built. We have still done it in Electronic City, but to do that similar activity elsewhere would be difficult, which is why we partner with the private builders and entities that have space available to make that information known, and also to work with them on getting the necessary approvals and clearances for the sake of their activities. So that facilitation is currently underway. Of course, we're open to taking any other suggestions or inputs or ideas on how further the department can support and scale up for startups.
Makes sense, Parnika. So, with my experience in Singapore, they have set up Scale Up Bio Center and a private entity, Nurasa. So, technically, what they do is they provide these scale up opportunities for startups who are looking at establishing their own manufacturing infrastructure. And is there a possibility that we have such entities in Karnataka shared with the private entities? Because I believe in Karnataka there are several pharmaceutical entities that do have a lot of infrastructure which can be restructured or repurposed and used for sectors like cellular agriculture or fermentation. How do you see that taking a shape?
So this is an interesting idea. If you could share the details of the Singapore project that you mentioned, we can explore replicating something similar, but which is suitable for our state to actually work out a model. Because we have been having this conversation with several private entities, but more on a developer point of view. We have not spoken to existing industries from a scale-up facility point of view, apart from one or two companies specifically in biomanufacturing. So where they're willing to put up a biomanufacturing facility which with exclusive usage for startups. So that's something which has been explored. But if there's a more generic model that can be pursued, like the one that you mentioned, we would be happy to explore the same.
Makes sense. And how do you think state is thinking about setting up common facilities? Because we also know that there are center of excellences in many of the universities. And could these facilities be reused or repurposed for startups in general? And could we see these specialized centers for smart protein itself, wherein they can support pilot to pre-commercial plants? And become part of the general ecosystem possible.
So as I mentioned, the centers of excellence that the department has set up with academic institutions are totally available and accessible to all startups. These are not exclusive to their academic institution startups alone. Having said that, is there a facility exclusive for smart proteins? Not as of now. But are there COEs which are also catering to this segment? Yes. So that's there. But if there are any specific requirements that startups have, saying that this is what it is, we are quite accessible. In fact, an email or a message, we'll be happy to understand what the requirement is and facilitate the same.
That's great. That's really helpful if for people who are looking for scaling up or setting up a pilot infrastructure. And Parnika, I'll also like to request if there is a possibility, because I see these kind of information or access to facility is not much known to startup founders. So given my experience in Singapore and South Korea, they used to take us for tours around these region and make us educate about the infrastructure and facilities that are available. Do you think we can also plan for one such cohort of startup founders who could be taken on a tour across the country and across the state, and probably inform them about the infrastructure these centers have?
So we generally do that for foreign startups that come in as a delegation, where we do a guided tour for them. But if our own startups need it, then most happy to do it. So if you just let us know, as GFI, if you can put together a bunch of startups and say that they would want to explore these facilities, we'll be happy to set that up. That should not be a problem at all.
Because why I got this question is most of these centers are located in Bangalore as a tier 1 city, and founders like us who are from tier 2 cities or across, we are looking at probably other tier 1 cities for opportunities. So I see T-Hub program in Hyderabad, also some of the innovation programs from Mumbai. So specifically, we know that Bangalore has the infrastructure and the right kind of facilities that is available. But regionally, I think this is something that we can plan or look into because small town founders find it very challenging to access these facilities in Bangalore. So how do you see that? Can we have some of these innovation centers beyond Bangalore or even Mysore for that matter in cities uh, which is towards the border state, which can have a transborder interaction or something?
Definitely, but I mean, I understand that today the facilities available in Bangalore are fairly popular and well known, but the facilities in tier 2, tier 3 cities are, while they are there, and while the department, as I mentioned, is already having 2 TBIs beyond Bangalore and setting up 11 more, also all beyond Bangalore. While there are several other institutes that we collaborate with beyond Bangalore as well. So it's if in fact we did this in our electronic sector vertical, where we took a bunch of companies and startups on a tech yatra of sorts to Mysore, and then showed them around the ecosystem, what kind of testing facility is available, which are the other industries that are present. We showed them the industrial land areas that are available and so on. So we can curate a similar thing and do it specific for BT requirements. If you tell us which area you would want to focus on, like if Mysore and near about is the focus, then we can always put together a day-long program where we can take you around these facilities. If any other coastal, let's say Mangalore or let's say Hubli, Dharwad, Belagavi is a focus, we can put that together. In fact, there is an arm of the department that's called as KDEM, Karnataka Digital Economy Mission, which has beyond Bangalore cluster offices in Mysore cluster, Mangalore cluster, and Hubli, Dharwad, Belagavi clusters. So we have a department SPOC who is based out of these centers, who kind of coordinates within those clusters. So we'll be happy to connect the startups with them so that they can address any particular queries or challenges that you have.
Sounds good. Sounds amazing. And this brings me to the final question. So you've mentioned you've actually shared your contact details and other information regarding your department. But if for a common startup founder, the most common question is where do we go and whom do we ask the question or talk to about these facilities, incentives, access to infrastructure, and so more. So is there a scope of having a dedicated state level advisory cell or POC for sector like smart protein?
To be very honest, it may not be feasible to have a dedicated cell for smart protein sector alone, but we do have a biotechnology facilitation cell which actively looks at all these verticals and in fact, the facilitation cell itself has a very accessible Gmail and WhatsApp number. And in fact, the ID that I shared is my own ID, which I am quite responsive on. So, in fact, a lot of startups, we have done this kind of a promotion session in several beyond Bangalore institutions, colleges, as well as other companies. And several startups that attend these sessions write to us on that ID and ask for saying that, you know, we are so and so, we want so and so benefit. We immediately connect them to the concerned person in the team and the necessary information is conveyed. So that's something that's done on a regular basis, and we're happy to do the same going forward as well.
And one more question is, do Karnataka startups specifically have DPPIT kind of requirement, or is it a general requirement as a registered company in Karnataka?
So there's a Karnataka startup cell, which is the official entity registering startups here in the state. So similar, more or less similar set of documents are required here as well. And the startup registration process is quite straightforward. So it's not as complex as DPIIT registration, but it's along similar lines.
And do you see possibilities of these facilities being provided only to private limited companies, or do you also see these kind of facilities being provided to proprietary entities or partnership
There is
entities?
absolutely no limitation of it having to be a company. Any registered legal entity as a sole proprietorship, partnership, Section 8, company, private limited, any of these are all acceptable modes. In fact, they're all, any of these entities are allowed for registration.
Thanks, Parnika. That was a very insightful exchange. So I learned a lot more about Karnataka myself and what potential it has. And by keeping the pace, we can actually look into incorporating Karnataka as the major player in the Indian scenario itself. And it was a wonderful conversation with you. And over to you, Radhika.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yashaswini. I think your questions really helped bring some key insights and added a lot of depth to the conversation. I appreciate how you tied the discussion back to the broader policy and ecosystem perspective, and you also drew on your individual experience. So thank you so much. And thank you, Parnika, for answering all the questions. Your insights were also really helpful and clarifying for everyone. We'll move into the Q&A on the presentation that you had shared, Parnika. So we've received few questions on the registration form. We have some questions on the Q&A. So if it's okay, then maybe we can dive straight into the Q&A.
Yeah, perfect. So I have the Q&A open here. Are companies registered outside Karnataka eligible to avail benefits under this policy? Unfortunately, no. You have to have a registered entity in Karnataka to avail the benefit. This is the bottom line for any policy incentive for any state, because we are not allowed to use state funds for incentivizing beneficiaries who are not part of the state. So for that reason, you would have to be a registered entity here. Even if you are headquartered elsewhere, you can still have a registered office here, which can be used for the process of registering in the Karnataka startup cell, and the benefits can be availed. If you want to avail specific benefits under the biotech policy, then there is a process to register under the biotechnology policy. It's on the same website of the department that I mentioned.
Got it.
I hope that answers. We are a startup owned by an NRI. Do we qualify for any grants in India? So it doesn't matter who owns it, as long as the registered office is here. So if you have a registered office here in Karnataka, you are eligible for incentives irrespective of whether you are an NRI or a full-time citizen of the country. And even kids collaboration with both industry and academia, can a Karnataka Smart Protein Innovation Fund or equivalent be started to promote translational R&D for this sector? So we have a pretty large plan, a few 100 crore fund plan, which will probably be announced maybe in the next couple of months, which is a fund of funds for deep tech, and which also, of course, involves smart protein and life sciences related activities, which is going to actively act as an innovation fund of sorts. While we have not called it out as a separate smart protein innovation fund, it's a pretty large amount in which a significant portion is set aside for life sciences and allied activities, under which the smart protein sector will fall. So I understand that several of the asks are to give it that kind of an exclusive name and prominence. But what I can say from a policy point of view is that getting a finance department of the state government to understand at a life science level itself is a big challenge. So the more we break it down and the more specialized it becomes, the harder approvals become. So we call it a general thing, but it will address the specific needs that you are asking for. So that should not be a problem.
Makes sense. I think before the next question, you had mentioned about how you can work with the state regulatory bodies in supporting startups and companies with approvals. I think this next question is quite interesting because we've been at GFI, we've been working with the FSSAI to kind of build more regulatory clarity for smart proteins because it's an emerging area of food tech, and there could be some areas of the technology that's not very well understood. So is there any way that the government of Karnataka, particularly the Department of IT/BT, can kind of work with the FSSAI to support with the setting up of regulations and standards, and also the question on fast tracking any approvals, maybe even establishing regulatory sandboxes, which is being seen in other countries, and it's been really useful for startups to kind of test their products in that manner.
So, with regard to FSSAI, we had one or two specific startup requests for some approvals and expediting some processes, which we did on a case-to-case basis based on from department to their officials on a official connect kind of mode. The reason why we have otherwise not spoken in general with the FSSAI as a formal platform is largely because as a department or as a government, we don't exactly know what we want from them. So if, let's say, GFI can act as a bridge in saying that these are the challenges that generally startups face, and this is what FSSAI can do to make this better, then we can take that request from you as an official representation of our department to FSSAI and have the follow-up conversation with all of you also involved. So on that same note, we are working closely with Niti Aayog's Frontier Tech initiative, where they are looking to promote biotech as an ecosystem across the country with specific models. So in that, we recently had a conversation where we tried to get Niti Aayog to act as a point of licensing for all such regulatory hurdles. In fact, FSSAI is only one slightly better hurdle, I must say. There are bigger ones like the medtech sector, where there are close to 8 to 12 different entities that need to sign off on one solution. So that becomes challenging, and rightfully so, or rather naturally so, because these regulators are guided based on what issues are known. But startups are usually solving issues which are not touched upon so far. So it's always a new thing for a regulator, and the minute it's new, they don't know which bracket to put it under, and that's where they get stuck. So what we have noticed in a lot of these cases is if we take a representation which is well thought out, saying this is where things are getting stuck, this is how you can address it, this is what can be done, that generally helps in getting things done faster. And if there's any such representation that you would want us to, mediate or facilitate with, we will be happy to do that from the state government side.
I think you've captured the concern that FSSAI has as well for the smart protein sector. We are trying to engage with them and with other regulatory bodies like the Central Pollution Control Board. So we'd love the government of Karnataka support in kind of approaching them and addressing some of these challenges. We have a last question. It's slightly vague. What level of support is provided for scale-up of novel proteins? I think you did cover some of this for example, in the technology centers, but is there anything else that you feel that the government can think of for
Yeah, if I have to pointedly answer that question, the first thing would be that there is a startup advancement program that we run, which has so far supported several startups very successfully. So that has helped them scale up in a big way. Second, if you're looking at scale-up support from a investment or a fundraising point of view, we work with a large group of VCs and investors who we can refer to you so that you can reach out to them and see how that can be supported. Third is if you're looking at market access, either in the government or abroad, that, as I mentioned, through the two programs, that is something that can be supported as well. Fourth, if you're looking at infrastructure or space requirement, as bare shell multiple options, land, multiple options. If you're looking at an existing biomanufacturing facility, there are a few industries who are actually actively supporting startups. If you could write to us on which of these four or is your requirement, we will be able to facilitate that connect fully.
That's positive. Thank you. I don't think we have any more questions. I think that brings us to the end of the webinar. Thank you so much, Parnika, once again for giving us your time and taking us through the presentation. And obviously also Dr. Yashaswini for that really interesting fireside chat. Thank you both. We hope you continue engaging with us and with the smart protein sector. And yeah, hope it was useful for the participants who joined today. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.